All right, so I'm going to start part two now. Last time we ended with a basic brick breaker game. We essentially had a ball bouncing around a room. We had the paddle moving left and right using our left and arrow keys. They're all moving fairly slowly. We also added the ability for the ball to bounce on the sides and the top. Um, Now notice that it bounces a little bit off the screen on the side and even off the top, I believe. So let's fix that first. Now to do that, let's go into our ball object and find the part where we're telling the ball to bounce, and that's right here. We've got two conditions. This one, if x is less than 0, if the x position of the ball is less than 0, which is the left-hand side of the screen, then we're going to reverse dir x to be the negative of itself. Okay, and then the same thing if x is greater than 1024. Why 1024? That was the width of the room. Now part of the problem is with our sprite. Now if we go into our sprite, I double clicked, our origin was way over here to begin with. Now I've centered it. If you click center, it goes right into the middle. That's the position that the ball is referring to when it grabs its x and y position, and that's why it's going off the screen about half the width of the ball. It's 50 total, 25 is half of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to adjust these to compensate for those 25 pixels. So instead of 0, we're going to say if it's less than 25. And instead of 1024, we could put 999, and that would be 25 pixels off. Now, if we wanted to change the width and height of our game later on, then this would look kind of funny. Like let's say we wanted the width to be 2000 pixels wide. Suddenly our ball would still be bouncing, but it would be bouncing right off of the middle of our window, which isn't what we want. So to make it a little bit more dynamic, so we can adjust later on, there's a built-in variable called room_width, and that will be equal to whatever width our room is. And remember, in our room main, under settings, we can change our width, and that way even later on after a game's complete, we can our logic will still work. It'll bounce off the outer border of our room, of our window, and then we can just actually subtract 25 from that room width to compensate for the width of the ball. Same thing here, if y is less than 25. Now these can be static because no matter how big our room is, 0 will always be the left-hand side on our x, and it will be the top of our window on our y. Click OK, and let's just click play to verify that our ball is now bouncing properly. Here we go, and it is bouncing properly off the sides and the top of our window. Here we go. What's next? Well, this is a brick breaker game. We don't have any bricks yet, so let's do that. We've already brought in a sprite of our brick. We just need to create an object. So I'm going to create a brick object. I'm going to call it obj brick and attach the brick sprite to it. And I'm not actually going to put any events or actions on our brick, and I'll show you why later. We could do it on the brick, or we could do the events on our ball, and just because it can cause some conflicts if we put sensing or events on the ball and the brick both together, it's usually better to keep it to one. So I'm going to put add event collision brick, and so I want these actions to happen when the ball collides with the brick. Let's grab a code block in here, and one thing we definitely want to have happen is have our ball reverse on our y. Now this is assuming it hits the brick from the bottom. diry equals diry times -1. All right. Now we can always get into, you're going to see that if our ball ends up bouncing off the side, it will still reverse our y. And of course you could get into more complicated if statements to check, first of all, if the x position of our ball is so far off of our brick, then you can have it behave in different ways. For now, let's just keep it simple. It's going to reverse on our y if it collides with the brick. Now this, if I go back in here, you can see at the top there's 3 radio buttons: self, other, and object. What that means is which object does these commands apply to. Now this one by default is self, and that is what I want. I want this variable diry to be changed on my ball object. I'm going to add another code block, but this one I want to apply to other. And other, because this isn't a collision event, that just refers to the instance of the other object that the ball is collided with. In this case, the brick. And what I'm going to do here is go instance underscore destroy. And all that means is that instance of the brick is going to be destroyed, gone. And that's it. Just make sure it says other, yep. And there we go. Now we need to go into our main room and let's create some bricks. So I'm going to put one there, and one there. Let's just start with 3 bricks. Keep it simple. Okay. And let's try it out. So we're bouncing, and there we go. The ball is reversing on our y just like we wanted, and the bricks are getting destroyed. Perfect. Now what happens if the ball goes right off the bottom? We didn't tell it to bounce, so it's doing exactly what we didn't tell it to do. But normally the game should end at that point. So let's do that. So if we go back into our ball object, in our step event, here's where we've got our if conditions for where our ball is. Now let's go if y is greater than room underscore height. So again, we're going to use our built-in variables, so it will adjust if we change the dimensions of our game. And let's add 25 to that. That way the ball is totally off of the screen. Then what do we want to have happen? There's a couple different ways we can have a game over screen. The way I'm going to do it is have a separate room for our game over screen. So I'm going to come back to this code in a second. Let's right click, create room. And this room, if we go to settings, I'm going to change the name of it to rm underscore game over. And that's it. Doesn't really look like a game over screen. So what we need to do next is create a sprite and an object that will just basically say game over. So spr underscore game over, and this time I'm going to click edit sprite, and clicking this button right here, I'm going to create a new object, a new sprite, and how big do I want? I'm going to make it about 800 by 300. 800 pixels wide by 300 high. Double clicking allows me to go into the image editor. Now font, if you want to change your font, you can click right there, and it should bring up a new window where we can choose the font and the size of our font. There we go. So right now by default I've got Tahoma. I had previously made it bold and a size of 72. Now if you want to go bigger than that, you can always type in there, like let's say you want to go 90. That would be fine. And then I'm going to choose my text tool and type game over. There we go. And now I'm going to bring up my font again, and I'm going to just have a small font, and underneath it, oops, game over. And now I'm going to have another font down here. I'm going to say click to play again. Now that's way too big. So I'm going to click font again and make it a little bit smaller, a fair bit smaller, maybe 14. Maybe a little bit bigger than that. If we go 24, that's better. There we go. So I'm going to click OK. Great. Let's center that. And now we can go into our game over room. Oh, and I don't have an object for it yet. I'll have to create an object for it first so that I can put it into my room. So there's my sprite, game over. And I'm only going to add one event in here, and that's, I'm going to click mouse, and I could go left button. Now if I used left button, the person would have to click directly on the text that says game over. Instead, I'm going to use global mouse, left pressed. So that's a single action, left pressed, and I'm going to drag a code block in here and use a function room underscore go to, and then in brackets you can put the index of the room you want it to go to. And just like in coding, in JavaScript, Python, it starts at 0, so my main room is actually index 0, and that's the one I want to go to. And that's it. The reason again for using global is it's going to grab any left click of your mouse if you click anywhere inside that window, and it will cause this command to happen. Now we know what we need to put in here. If the ball goes outside of the room, I'm basically just going to room go to and have it switch to the game over room, which is index 1. Going back into here, I haven't put my game over object in there yet, so I select my game over object, click, and there it is. Lovely. Click OK. OK. And let's try it. I'm playing. Oh, I missed the ball. Game over. Now I click, and it starts over again. What's next? Well, one thing I noticed is the paddle is allowed to go way off the screen, which is a problem. So let's go back into our paddle. We can add some restrictions. We've got two events, left and right key on the keyboard keys. In here we just have, no matter what, it's going to reduce our x value of our paddle. Let's just put a condition in there. If x, the x of our paddle, is greater than, if we went 0, then again that's going to be based on the origin of our paddle. So let's go into our sprite paddle. It is 395 pixels wide. halfway point is about 197. So we could actually round that out and go 200 and say, all right, if that origin, again, the origin is this crosshairs right here, if that point is greater than 200 pixels from the left-hand side, then if it's greater than that, then we're going to allow it to reduce the x value of our paddle by 5. So we continue to move over. And on our right, same thing, except rather than greater than, we're going to go if x is less than, meaning it hasn't reached the edge yet. If it's less than room width minus 200, then we'll increase our x and allow it to move right. Let's see if that works. And when you're making a game in GameMaker, you're constantly doing this. Adding something, testing it, adding something, testing it. If something doesn't work right, you go back, change it again, constantly going in and back and forth. Here we go. And it stops right on the edge. Can't go any further. And this works on the same as on the left-hand side. Yeah, can't go any further. Great. What's next? Well, we don't have any points. And so let's add a score in here. Now to do score, we're actually going to have to create a font, and so we're going to use the fonts folder here. If we right click on it, we can create a font, and I'm going to call it font score. You can choose what font you want. I'm going to choose font black, and let's go maybe 32 pixels. That's a decent size. Okay. And then I'm going to create an object. We actually don't need a sprite for this because we're going to dynamically create the score text for this. So I'm going to call this obj game score, no sprite. I'm going to add an event, create event, and I need to make a variable to track our score. I'm going to call it game score and set it to being 0 to start. And then we want it to increase, but we're not going to do any of the increases on this object. Again, we want that to be on the ball, just like the actions for destroying the brick. So what we do need here is a draw event. Okay, and so inside the draw event, it's similar to a step event, except this is all about drawing and how often it's being drawn to the screen. I'm going to drag in a code here, and the first thing I'm going to do is put a draw set font, and we're going to use the name of our font. That's font score. There we go. Now it's recognized. It changes color, and then draw set. Draw text. And we've got a bunch of options here. You could do draw text color and add in a color code. I'm just going to do basic draw text right now, and the parameters we need is an X position, Y position, and string. So we're going to go 20 pixels in from the left-hand side, 20 pixels down from the top, and now our string. So this is a string, so I'm going to use quotation marks and go score, colon, space, close that off, and now if we do a plus, we can put our variable. Now if we just went game score, which is our variable, we will get an error, and the reason why is because this is an integer type. We want to make sure that it is a string type, and so I'm going to use the string function and just put game score inside it to convert that to a string, and then it will allow it to be inside here. Alright, click OK. Now if we ran it, you'd see score 0 and nothing would change every time the ball hits the brick. We want to have it increase. So let's go to the ball in the collision event, because that's when we want the score to increase when it collides with a brick. And we can use any of these. I'm going to go into here. You'd think you would need to use other, but we actually don't need to. Another way that we can refer to it is by typing the name of the object first. That's obj game score, then dot, and now our variable, which is game score. And I just want to double check, is that the name of the variable? Yes, it is, game underscore score. I'm going to go plus equals, which means it's going to increase, and I'm going to have to go up by 10 every time it hits a brick. Okay. There we go. Now you might notice, where is our score? And we get an error. And that's because I forgot to put that object in our room. So let's go into our game over room. Let's choose our game score object. And you can throw it anywhere. It doesn't actually matter because we've already set a static absolute position of 20 pixels in, 20 pixels down. Let's try that again. We shouldn't get an error anymore. We should now see the game score text. Oh, there's our game. Oh, and what happened to our score? Oh, you're probably thinking, why did you put game score inside the game over room? And that's exactly a problem. I don't want that. I want it in our main room, not our game over room. But let's leave it in the game over room because it makes sense to have the scores show up there as well. There we go. We have score, and it increases as it goes. And now we've got a basic brick breaker game. Thanks for watching.